What is going on, everyone? Nathan coming at you. Today we're doing a video that we had on the works for a little bit of a while, geez. Today I have on King Krabs. For those that don't know them, he is a YouTuber slash amazing monotype player for a long time. If you guys follow me on Twitter, you know that I always retweet whenever he gets these crazy accomplishments of getting all 18 typings into the top 500 on the ladder, like a dedicated account for every one. So King Krabs, how's it going, man?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. And I suppose, yeah, just a little bit about myself, if it's okay. As Nathan
Absolutely.
said, my name's King Krabs, or you can call me Alex. I don't mind. Either one's cool. And I've been playing monotypes probably since generation 5 is when I started playing monotypes. So it's been pretty much my dedicated entire competitive career has been monotypes. I play the odd bit of formats like OEU, kind of casual OEU stuff, but I'm pretty much mainly did monotypes. So thank you so much for having me on the channel, Nathan.
Well, everyone make sure to go give him a follow or watch his videos. He's got some awesome stuff. Just ranked all the history in Pokemon in monotype 12 days ago, I see here. Really like a skilled player. Like I considered myself a monotype specialist, if anything, last generation. But in terms of skill, I don't have a stick to shake at you there. But today we're gonna be doing an interesting video. We're gonna be doing a ranking of all the typings in the pre-home metagame. And the reason I do this is because I have been coming down here a lot and saying, man, I feel like X typing got a huge buff before, like with the new home Pokemon, or flying is so much better, or electric is so much better, bada bada. But the fact is, not many people played the pre-home metagame. So a lot of us, when we assume that, are kind of talking our asses, me especially. So I figured we'd get King Krabs on here to kind of talk and like walk us through what the metagame was like a little bit before before the home metagame, and then we can talk a little bit about what we expect to happen in the metagame going forward. How's that sound?
Yeah, sounds fantastic. And unfortunately, I will say I've played a lot of pre-home generation monotypes. For my sins, I will never go back to it, but hey, I have to do it for the content, you know.
Actually, I should find you on Twitter because you had all 18 accounts, right?
Yes, it's my pinned tweet, I think, there.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Yeah,
to be fair.
If anyone wants to question my man's qualifications right here, like this is great. I was trying this for a little bit when I was playing it a lot last generation, but I never got that done. So, this is Natdex too. Yeah, so it's Gen 9 was an awful tier, like Gen 9 monotype. Hopefully it's improved. I think with every batch of content and DLC and new Pokemon we see, it'll get better. But the question is right now, how playable is it? And especially versus before. So let's start off with Bug. How would you rank Bug on a tier chart before the home content came out?
This is going to be maybe a controversial one, and a lot of people will get at me, especially, I don't want to kind of cast disparities between players, but I think more casual players would instantly assume Bug is bad. Bug's a bottom tier type, but honestly, I think in recent generations, ever since the introduction of heavy duty boots, which was generation 8, if I think I'm not mistaken, I think Bug has carved itself an insane niche. I think it's hard for Bug to be necessarily a bad type if you give it its heavy hitters. Just looking at pre-home, you had Caesar, Volcarona, Heracross, Low Kicks. Those 4 enough are fantastic Pokemon. It was missing some crucial keys. It's missing Araquanid and like Buzzwole.
Buzzwole was a big one. That was a huge one, yeah.
I think Buzzwole, Araquanid, honestly, shoot up to S tier. I think it's top tier, if not... It's top 3 in Natdex at the moment, I think, personally. I think Bug is insane. In Generation 9 pre-home, I would say it's probably B or A. I guess I would stick it in A and we'll see kind of where the types fall in the meantime. Maybe I'd bump it down to B. But I do think it's a solid type. I think it had 5 out of 6 good mons, if that makes sense. So, but with a limited decks, having 5 out of 6 good team members is pretty good. I remember trying to run Rabsca on my Bug team just because there wasn't a huge amount of options, and that thing sucks. I know it has that wish thing, revival blessing. It sucks. Don't try it. Don't go there. But besides that, as I said, it has Caesar, Volcarona, Fortress, like undisputably one of the kings of hazard control in the game, which Bug really likes.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I do agree with you. I think that like the losses were pretty significant, but everyone's gonna have losses, and the biggest two like lofts keeping up Bug was gonna be Volcarona and Scizor there for sure. Now, granted, everyone hears Volcarona nowadays and thinks like, oh my god, the banned Pokemon Volcarona is like unbelievable. It's an Ubermon. Not really. The main thing that made Volcarona so broken and overused is its sterilization, which is of course absent in monotype Gen 9. So I'm surprised to see it this high. We'll kind of see how the typings shake out too, though, because like I think we might rank everything and be like, okay, maybe A should be a B. Like, I always find the start of a tier list so like arbitrary in terms of what is ranked where.
Completely agree. I think like at the moment bug is A, but I could see it shifting down to B depending on where we see it. But as well, a bit of a bug that I find interesting. I think it's probably the only. I think it's a very unique type in monotype just as a whole. And I would say it's maybe one of the most unique types in monotype because I think it's the only type that doesn't necessarily have a coherent game plan or synergy. It's just kind of you're slapping 6 good mons on a team. Unfortunately, they're all bug type. That actually is a hindrance because that type inherently sucks. Yeah. But like you're choosing Heracross for its fighting type, you're choosing Caesar for its steel type, you're choosing Volcarona for its fire type. They all happen to be bugs, and that is actually a hindrance. But it's probably one of the only types, like, you're never going to run them on a bug type. I'm on a bug, like, a pure bug type. You never run a pure bug type in a bug type team because bug sucks. All your typing is secondary type B. I think that's where the strength of kind of comes from, in my opinion.
That's a good point.
For that reason, I think it's inherently hard for bug to be bad as long as it has its heavy hitters or some of its heavy hitters.
Well, I guess that makes it flexible too, which is nice. Okay, let's keep it moving here. We're going to go to Dark next. Dark, I got to imagine, is top 2 to 3, if not for the prevalence of Fairy type. Because Fairy type is also up there. It's a bit of a relationship, but I got to imagine it's top 2 or 3, right?
I think without spoiling too much, I think the top tier is a triangle. I think it's almost its own stereo triangle, like the Dark, Fairy, Ghost is kind of the top tier, and the three of them feed off each other a lot. I think if the meta developed a little bit more before Home came out, I honestly think Dark would have been the best type in the game. Given a small bit more development. I think it was underdeveloped mainly because of Fluttermane. I think Fluttermane was, and I'll go on record here and say I think Fluttermane is extremely unhealthy for the monotype meta pre-home, definitely. I'm kind of on the fence about it at the moment. I think it's more fine at the moment, but pre-home, I think Fluttermane was very unhealthy. Pre-home, it has things like King Gambit, all the Ruinous Quartet. I think maybe Chi-Yu got eventually banned. When that was allowed, that thing was just monstrous. The whole meme, like, oh, Specs Chi-Yu overheat, goes everything. It's true. Like,
Chien-Pao is still legal in the tier, right?
Yes, Chien-Pao is still legal and was legal, and that thing's a monster. It had heavy hitters like Hydreigon, obviously always quite nice. Personally, I like stall breaking Hydreigon. With like Taunt Substitute or like Taunt Roost and stuff, or Nasty Plot. I think it's a really solid set, especially on Dark. Had low kicks, amazing monster to spam Tinted Lens, first impression that, having a 90 base priority move that's stab that you can't really resist is kind of bonkers. And as well as that, it just had a pretty nice defensive core in things like Umbreon is pretty good. It had the Grimmsnarl for screens, which is always nice.
Okay, that's interesting.
I like Umbreon a bit. I think Umbreon's pretty decent as well. I had Tyranitar for obviously the Spadef boost. Now, my community will laugh at me and say, oh, I'm a big T-Tar hater. I'm a bit of a T-Tar hater on Dark, but I can't deny, especially in the limited decks, is pretty good. And then not to mention it had the absolute monster that was Roaring Moon, which I think at launch was... I was kind of concerned for the meta at launch, like this thing is insanely strong. Now, thankfully, Booster Energy went, which made it a bit more manageable, but I think given time, that thing would have seen crazy usage. And of course, Meowscarada 2 was just solid. So for those reasons, I think great offensive presence, great typing in general. I think Dark, easy S tier.
That would be my assumption going in. Glad to see that rectified here. Next up, we got Water. And Water's a type that I think everyone just hears and immediately assumes like, oh my god, it's the best thing in the game. Last generation, I don't know, what's your opinion on Water last generation? I thought it was just
Nathan, that's Dragon.
Oh my goodness. Good save. Well, let's do Water while I'm talking about it. While I'm gassing it up here. Last generation, I thought Water was like not quite top tier, it was just solid. But this generation, it's kept a lot of the heavy hitters. Where would you say that Water ranks pre-home in Scarlet and Violet?
I think Water is never a bad type. I think it's impossible for Water to be a bad type just because Water is
defensively great,
pretty solid offensively.
Pelipper.
Has access to Rain, exactly, fantastic. It didn't have Urshifu back at the time. I do believe it had Barraskewda, which is obviously, Banded Barraskewda hits so hard. And
Walking Wake for a while, I'm assuming.
Walking Wake, when it came out, I think Assault Vest Walking Wake was personally my favorite. The bulky offense provided for the team was fantastic. It saw the slow twins, always fantastic. To Donzo, so you could go like heavy stall, Donzo, slow twins, Pex kind of, or you can go Rain offense. Now, I don't think it had the same amount of Swift Swim as it used to. I think it misses things like Kingdra. Kingdra was really solid. And overall, I think it struggled a lot with Grass, even with the neutrality and Toxapex and Pelipper. I still think it struggled, but Grass is an okay niche type. I wouldn't think struggling against Grass is the main. it's not the main reason. It's not going to be a good type. I think I would put water ultimately in the lower end of A tier. I think it's impossible for water to be bad necessarily. I don't think it quite reached the heights that it did in previous generations, as you said, but I think it's still solid. Yeah,
it's not bad. You're right. It's never, especially as defensive like inherent typing, it's never gonna be terrible.
I don't think it's actually possible for water to be bad.
I agree there. Next, we're gonna have electric. So electric, I think last generation was a sleeper, like amazing typing. It was, so of course, you hear electric, you don't think of it a great defensive typing, but being able to show up your weaknesses just immediately with a Zapdos or a Rotom is really insane. And the ability, like, it just came down to such a unique game plan. That's what I always loved about it. It always came down to removing the ground types that would let your Raichu Alola or Regieleki or whatever sweep. But this generation, it lost about every major important electric Pokemon you could have. So it did get a lot better with home. I think that's automatic. But where would you have ranked it before the home metagame came?
Electric's a weird one because I think, again, maybe with a little more development and a tiny bit of like updates that weren't necessarily home tier. Like I've got like one new legendary, like Walking Wake or Iron Leaves or something. I think we could have seen it bumped up a little bit, but we didn't, and I can't, talk theorycraft. So I think ultimately, based on what we had, it was okay. I think C tier is a pretty reasonable place to put it. You put it in C tier, I think it's pretty reasonable. It did have some cool new mons. It had Iron Hands, Iron Thorns. Honestly, I think Iron Thorns is a bit of a meme. I think it's overrated. And I think the idea of having Paradox Future Forms with Quark Drive on an electric terrain team, in theory, is amazing. But when you're relying on Pincurchin, you're pretty down bad. I'm not gonna lie. Like you're scraping the bottom of the barrel if you're relying on Pincurchin here. No, I don't think Pincurchin's bad necessarily. And
it's just not Tapu Koko.
Exactly, and it had like weird spikes, toxic spikes, sucker punch sets that were a memento, which is pretty okay. I will openly, I'll openly say I think the terrain extender ban was iffy. I think yes,
there was a ban. Okay, what was that?
Yeah,
targeting?
Terrain extender is banned. I think probably it was a hangover from Generation 8 when number one terrain was better and number two the Tapus were running around. Yes, I think that thing was amazing back then. I think let me check just to make sure it is banned because I believe I remember trying to use terrain extender. Pincurchin be like, oh, that's banned.
That's surprising to me.
Oh no, it's not banned anymore. Sorry, my bad. Maybe I was just a fool and just thought it was.
That's okay.
I just kind of
without the Tapu, it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I mean, like this generation, like if you look at all the important Pokemon that lost in Electric, I was bringing it up on my screen here earlier. But if you just look at last generations, like a classic Electric team, Zeraora is a big loss. Magnus isn't as important as it used to be, but the biggest one has got to be Tapu Koko. Just setting your terrain, being a pivot at the same time. That fairy typing also made it decent for attacking ground types, not even mentioning the grass knot coverage. But then Raichu Alola's rising voltage doesn't have that even nowadays. Regieleki is back too, but it's just being able to target that and use them in conjunction was so powerful. So there's a lot of major losses. Got a couple of them back.
I think one of the big things Electric loved, I think what made Electric is its just ludicrous speed. Like it has some ludicrous speed tiers. Like Zeraora, I know it's not the fastest thing in the meta, but over 400 speed, you're not going to sniff at that. Had Regieleki, Alolan Raichu, and Surge Surfer. Like its speed is what really set it apart, and I think it lost so much of its heavy speed hitters, and it kind of got left in a weird middle ground of bulky offense, which Electric just does not suit.
No.
I know. I think Iron Hands and Sandy Shocks are good additions, but not necessarily enough to carry them through, if that makes sense. So I think it got left in a weird position of bulky offense, which Electric doesn't like. I think Electric likes just kind of balls to the wall offense, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to put it, actually. Is in a tier that is so frequently just has types aiming towards hyper offense and blah, blah, blah. Like, Electric's had, like, the final, like, trump card of, like, no, I don't care what hyper offense you're running. I am faster. And with my Raichu Aleki, or my Raichu or my Aleki, I will kill you. So,
yeah.
Would you say
so
C or D?
I don't think it was inherently bad. I'm gonna say C for now, but again, this is a tentative tier list. I think when it's all done, I want to look back at it again and
we'll shuffle for sure.
Around.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this is just an initial sort of thoughts.
Yeah.
Here we got Fairy. Whew.
Fairy
decent.
Again, definitely amazing. I don't think I'd quite put it in S tier alongside like things like Dark and Ghost. I would put it at the top of A tier, like the number one type in A tier, like the best type in A. But I just think there was just something about it, and I don't know what it was, that just felt like you were just missing things, which is weird because things like Iron Valiant are crazy good. You had Azumarill back. Now Azumarill, I think, lost some of its tools it liked, not inherently a bad thing, but it just lost some things. It had Grimmsnarl again with screen support, which is always nice, especially when I play offensively. It had Fluttermane, I think the #1 used Pokemon in the tier.
Single best mon, yeah.
Yeah, single best mon. I think that should have been banned a long time ago. And for that reason, I think it's almost strange that I wouldn't put it in top tier. I don't quite know why I don't put it in top tier. I don't necessarily have a logic for it. I just don't think it had necessarily the same impact as Dark and Ghost did.
Well, it sounds to me like you're saying it was a bit one note and a little bit like, you know, you go as Fluttermane goes, which is a little bit like One Trick Pony, whereas Dark and Ghost, I would assume, had more flexibility to play around.
Ghost, not so much. It was kind of the same, like, it's Fluttermane the type, but with more better one-trick ponies, if that makes sense. It was a one-trick pony with better tools to one-trick. And I think that's what kind of set Fairy apart. Almost with Fairy as well, like, you could do a lot of things. You could go for, like, screens offense, you can go for spike stacking with Klefki, you can kind of go for a weird defensive set. Now, I think some of the new tools are a bit meh. I think Dash Bund is a bit overrated, personally. I think some people said it was amazing. I wasn't sold on it personally. Of course, Fluttermane was incredible. Iron Valiant was incredible. But as well as that, I do think it just was missing some kind of key components. And Steel was honestly a niche enough type in the meta, which is weird for Steel because Steel is typically top tier.
We're talking about it like an objectively good type, yeah.
Yeah, but when it did show up, it definitely struggled a bit with Steel, and I think it overall struggled to break through Poison, which is, again, a type we'll talk about in a few minutes, and a solid type overall. So for that reason, I think just because it didn't quite... Also, I'm going to reserve S tier for types that shook up the meta completely, as in, there was realistically not many answers to those types. I think there's only 2 of those. I think Fairy had answers, and neutral matchups could beat Fairy, although it's so strong that it was still very good, if that makes sense.
That's a very fair argument right there. Okay, so next up we got Fighting. Fighting, I think, in my books, I'm jumping ahead of the video right here, but I think it's going to be the candidate for the biggest, like most improved type with all the new additions. But where do you think it ranked before the Pokemon Home editions?
See, that really depends exactly. You pinpoint where. I think at launch, like day 1, Fighting was S tier. I think Fighting was the best type in the game day 1. I think Quaquaval, Annihilate were like, and Iron Valiant were like, oh my god, these things are scary. These things are, you know, ridiculously powerful in a more limited meta as well. It had things like Breloom back. The new Tauros is honestly fantastic. Palucha, which is always good.
New Tauros.
Great Tusk. I think the new Tauros is really solid. I think it's a really, really underrated monotypes.
Okay.
It had Great Tusk. It had Slitherwing. It just had all the tools to be the best type in the game. And that was until the Fluttermane Nation attacked. And I think that one Pokemon alone almost completely invalidated the type. I was shocked to see a type that I would thought, this is Fighting's generation, this is finally going to be the generation Fighting's S tier or top tier, at least A tier, and Fluttermane came and just blew it apart.
There's not a worse Pokemon to be that high in usage for
exactly,
typing.
Exactly. I realistically don't think you had any options. You had, like, Lucario, kind of, if it wasn't specs. You had Assault Vest bulky, Iron Hands, kind of. It also died twice. I'm sorry, two hits of Moonblast died. So, for that reason, I think Fighting fell off immensely. I remember I saw your tweet here recently. I
brought it up on screen, yeah.
The 0.3%, I think that might be a typo. I think it still was 3%. Now, don't quote me on that, but I think it's still 3% usage. But even still, like, it fell out because I think at launch, this was probably near 10% usage. It was really good until people realized, oh wait, Fluttermane just wins. So for that reason, I realistically can't put it higher than D tier, or maybe C tier, low C tier, D tier, just because, yeah, as you said, point of view, you got swept by Fluttermane. There's no questions about it. There's no option for Fluttermane. And when that thing is so, you know what? I'm going to put D tier. It hurts me to say D tier.
Wow.
I think D. So I think if it wasn't for Fluttermane, it would be A or B. But I just think when you're invalidated so hard by a Pokemon that's used like 50% of the meta, you realistically aren't a good type.
Yeah, and it's one thing to be like, you know, if we're talking about, you know, Gen 8 overused, and we're talking about you lose automatically to Clefable and overuse, especially in like pre-DLC metagames. You'd be like, oh, well, that sucks, but you know, it's a 6 Pokemon game, you can swap around and blah, blah, blah. But when offensively your entire team is invalidated by as soon as Pokemon enters the field, there's nothing you can do. And even if you get into a situation where you don't get 2 at KO by Fluttermane and you've got like an Iron Hands with Assault Vest. I don't know if this is the case, but let's assume that it can take 2 hits of Moonblast, and that's an answer. Well, you're going to swap out it against the Iron Hands every single time, and then just come in 3 turns down the road and get the same sweep later.
You're always fighting disadvantageous position, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, just counter it," but as you said there, this isn't OU, this isn't UU, this isn't a traditional 1v1 format.
Yeah.
You have extremely limited tools at your disposal, and if your type simply can't counter something, you just can't counter something. And I think pre-home fighting it has like really niche answers, like Shadow Sneak, Bandage, Gallade, but any good player will know, like, well, I'm not saying against Gallade to Shadow Sneak me, and they swap out, and then you had to really rely on your opponent either messing up or get like insane reads. And that's to take care of one Pokemon. The other 5 are still a massive threat, so for that reason, yeah, I think it's a shame to say that fighting is that bad,
That's
but
crazy.
I really think it is.
I'm glad you painted it that way of like the difference that Fluttermane makes, but I completely agree. I would have assumed it was just like C or D period, and Fluttermane was just like the final nail. But the way you laid it out there makes a ton of sense. Next, we're gonna see Fire. I am very curious to hear what you say about this. We do have a lot of interesting Pokemon who can take advantage of Fire, with Torkoal still being in the tier. Volcarona we talked about being great too. Chi-Yu was banned, of course, but where would you have ranked it pre-DLC or pre-home?
I have 2 answers. I think pre Walking Wake, probably B tier. Post Walking Wake, probably lower C tier, or sorry, high C tier. Like just the top of C tier, like just a tiny bit worse. I know it's strange. How can I say like, oh, one Pokemon making that much of a difference? But it made the water matchup almost impossible, because your Sun, which is typically your answer to water, which is a good type in the first place, suddenly became just literally, oh, I made my opponent stronger in every way possible. Hydro Steam became even harder to deal with, and its photosynthesis became better, as well as that Dragon was always a tough match for Fire, and getting another tool that makes it even harder, which wasn't very pleasant. Also, Steel wasn't the most relevant in the meta, which I think is a big reason why Fire often has a strong niche in monotypes. So for that reason, I'd probably put it like the top of C tier, if not low B tier. It's a solid type. I think Fire generally actually likes a more limited dex overall. Because Fire, it's strong type, it's offensively strong type. Defensively pretty good too. As long as it's Sun, Fire's pretty happy, and had Torkoal, it's pretty happy. And again, I think the Chi-Yu difference is made a big difference. When Chi-Yu, pre-Chi-Yu ban and pre-Walking Wake, I'd almost say A tier. But when, as it slowly veered towards C tier, as things got banned and things got added, I think it slowly veered towards the top of C tier, which made a big difference, because I think Chi-Yu was its heaviest hitter. Like, that thing was despicably strong. With Specs and Sun, you just didn't survive. I don't care who you were. You could quad resist. Like, Chi-Yu doesn't care. It's Oko in you. Simple.
Oh yeah, it's destroying Toxapex in Sun, so you don't have to defend me there. Here's one that I imagine is going to be really low. I could be mistaken. I think I've heard some rumblings that it wasn't as bad as I thought, but Flying, where do you think that ranks?
Flying sucked.
Okay, because I got to imagine. Someone told me there was a top 3 type pre-home. I was like, what am I? What?
No. Sorry. Whoever said that, I'm very sorry to say you're wrong.
Okay, good.
You're off your head. Look, I have some outlandish opinions, don't get me wrong. Part of it, maybe I'm being so harsh on Flying because I think it was undisputed top tier in Gen 8. I think Gen 8 Flying was
in its own tier.
In its own tier, absolutely. It was S tier in itself by itself. It was dominant. I think it lost so many good tools. Now, I don't think it was strictly the worst type in the game, but I do think it was not amazing. It's still a Dragonite. It's still a Corviknight. Any type of those 2 Pokemon can't inherently be terrible, but it had no answer to Ice, which isn't terribly relevant, but can be. It had no answer. You know what? It's weird. It had no answer to lower tier types like Ice, Rock, and Electric, which inherently are kind of bad types, but even still, if an opponent's team carried a Rock type, a strong Rock type, or a strong Ice type, which you often do, like Ice is good coverage, you have Ice a lot, there realistically was not a lot that Flying could do against that. Running things like Kilowattrel for Electric types is a bit... it's okay. It's a terminally average Pokemon. So for that reason, I think low D tier is a respectable place for Flying. It's not the worst. It's not as bad as Launch Generation 8 Flying, when Kyurem literally invalidated the type harder than Fluttermane did with Fighting. But it still wasn't great. Now, I had a friend of mine actually pass me a Rain Flying team, which was pretty cool. It was like It was pretty cool. Was it terribly viable? It wasn't bad. But I mean, when you're running like Rotom Fan, I question how good the type is.
Yeah, it's a good barometer. I mean, yeah, that sounds about right to me. I think that, casuals often talk about Pokemon or competitive Pokemon in terms of like how many legendaries you use. Like, oh, you're a legendary spammer, yada yada. And that never really is on my radar at all. And it's not until you actually look through like a flying, like all the available Pokemon, look at what flying has, and you go, holy shit, like flying needs a lot of legendaries. You have all the Kanto birds, you have all the genies from Gen 5. So losing all those Pokemon pre-home is kind of insane.
Celesteela as well, which
Celesteela was maybe the single best Pokemon last generation, in my opinion.
Hater. I wake up real early to know Celesteela is hated. Make sure it knows its place and it's hated by me. I hate that Pokemon so much. But yeah, I think it's fantastic on flying, and for that reason, it's losing that's a huge hit. Losing us all legendaries, as you said, flying is basically the quote unquote noob legendary spammer of the type. But hey, it's really good at what it does, so I'm not disparaging it. That's how you play the flying type, and without that, it's a meh type at best.
Yeah, it doesn't. What makes flying so good is just it's like multiplicity. It can do so many different things so well, and like when you lose that depth, that bench of Pokemon, it gets too hard. So we're gonna carry it forward. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just a small bit on flying there. I think as well, balance became slightly worse this generation than Generation 8. I think flying really loved balance. Like flying played balance to perfection. And now that offense, just the general power creep of stronger moves makes balance that slight bit worse. I think it makes flying inherently a small bit worse. But sorry, onto Ghost. I mean, we know what it is. You can plop it right up there in S tier. No questions asked. Is it better than Dark? I think no. Just partially because Dark beats Ghost, obviously.
Just through inherent matchups, yeah.
And partially, I think, because given a tiny bit more development, I think we would have seen Dark hit top tier. And if Fluttermane was banned, there was no questions asked. Dark would hit top tier. However, of course, Ghost is still fantastic. I think the two new Gotcha Force guys, what are they called? Armor Rouge and Ceruledge, the Mega Man looking guys. Sorry, I play so much Gotcha Force. It's a really neat. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of it watching this game, but they look just like Gotcha Force monsters.
Okay.
But those two things are incredible, especially Ceruledge. Obviously, it's not Armor Rouge isn't available, but Ceruledge, I think, is a sleeper, one of the best additions to Generation 9. I think weakness policy, weak armor, endure with like Bitter Blade, close combat,
priority healing. If you want.
It's so crazy. It's such a good Pokemon. I think Ghost loved that. I think Ghost, and the thing is, Ghost isn't starving for fire types, but Ceruledge and Skeledirge, in my opinion, are a cut above the rest. Like, these are the two Ghost fires you want on your team, especially in the absence of things like Blacephalon, who was very good. I don't have to go into any detail about Fluttermane. I mean, it's just probably the best type in the game, best Pokemon in the pre-home meta. When Annihilate was allowed, that thing was scary. I think Annihilate edged slightly in favor of Ghost over Dark, but that got banned not too soon after the generation, so I think that gave Dark that tiny bit of edge, but I mean, Annihilate was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's as an OU player, it is a little bit odd to me, and someone who's been away from monotype to come back and hear that Fluttermane has been wrecking the metagame for so long. It's like, well, fucking yeah, it did. Like, it's a freaking Flutter. We knew that thing was broken in OU like day 2. What's that thing still doing around here? So
I can't believe it stayed that long. And I mean, just anyone can look at those stats and be like, oh, that thing is fucking min-maxed to shit.
It's destroying VGC still. Like,
those stats are so min-maxed, it's ridiculous. Game Freak went out of their way to like, let's make the perfect special Pokemon, and they did it.
What would be an excellent offensive type?
Realistically, nothing can resist. And then, even still, if you did have trouble with any matchup, Mimikyu is always a fantastic option for basically every matchup with Ghost, because Disguise lets you be a bit cheesy against everything, which is quite good.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, well, we're going to have that 1 second here. My love is up next, Grass. I've loved it so much. We were just talking about before this call how I don't know if there's a single like worse thing to lose than Credillion Grass. Maybe Ferrothorn's in the discussion. Maybe the Grassy Glide specific Rillaboom is a bigger loss. But it's tough. I mean, I think that monotype as a whole needs Credillion to be in a healthier space for Rock's sake too. But wrap about Grass.
I would agree with that. So Grass, I'm going to come on very heavy fire for saying this. I think Grass was slightly better than people give it credit for. I'd probably put it in like C tier.
Okay, that's
and maybe like the lower end of C tier. I think again in a meta where offense is favorable, Grass actually did that surprisingly okay this generation.
Yeah, you know
So
what? You got Meowscarada. Wochikin is always a surprisingly bulky mon. Uh, Toadscroll isn't terrible. Like Breloom always puts in work in every game. I'm not stunned to hear that.
I think, yeah, Breloom and Meowscarada are the two things that shoot it up into viability. I think those two things alone are make it quite good. Not other good Pokemon. I honestly think Toadscroll is a bit underrated, and people, give out to me like Toadscroll is a giant waste of space. I think Toadscroll is a little bit underrated. Not
Plus four.
necessarily amazing, pretty okay. Its special attack is meek, but Stab, Earth Power is still pretty nice on a grass type for dealing with a lot of like fire types. Its special defense is surprisingly good. Like it's gonna take a hit. It has Mycelium Might, which kind of sucks, but it has the Spadef to sleep things that ordinarily you couldn't sleep. Now it lost very bad to fire, but again, after the removal of Chi-Yu, we saw a lot less usage of fire, which is good. And I think things like
Right.
Meowscarada, as I said, it kind of shot it up into viability. And it wasn't a completely washed out by Sun either, because it had Scovillain and that Amoonguss looking dude, Group on it. Like
Rubon,
those
yeah.
two things were not amazing fire answers, but they were like niche fire checks, which is not bad for one of your hardest matchups. Ice was pretty rough, but Breloom did a lot against it. Breloom comes out, wham wham, Mac punching the shit out of every
What
ice type
set
it
was
sees.
Breloom running?
I like Sash, Spore, Mac
Okay.
Punch, Bullet Seed,
Bullet Seed, yeah. Maybe
and then rock two more Swords Dance depending on what I fancied.
that's okay. I was just playing a bit of Monograss earlier, and that was the exact set I was running, so.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Breloom is kind of, I think strong technician priority Pokemon with good offensive typing are always good in monotype.
Breloom
Caesar and
always puts in
Breloom,
work. It
yeah,
always puts in work. Just Sash Spore means I guarantee sleep you. Now you're forced to swap out to something, and it's a freaking Breloom, so good luck swapping easily.
yeah,
Roxanne can even make it a buffer in terms of predictions. It's
absolutely.
always putting in work.
So for that reason, I think those reasons alone, just the weird, strong offensive presence it has, I think I'd
Was
put it
enough.
in a weird like low C tier. It's not terrible, but it's not meta defined either. But as well as that, it didn't necessarily struggle with the top tiers. Like it wasn't good against Ghost or Dark or Fairy, but it wasn't necessarily bad against them either. It was probably a slightly losing matchup. Its hardest time was probably Bug.
Okay.
And looking at the tier now, I would move Bug down a bit, but we'll get that to the end of it.
What the hell does this team do against Volcarona?
It loses.
I was gonna say, you said like there's a slight chance it had against Fire, but what the hell do you do against Volcarona?
It was okay, I think, with Sash, Breloom, but you really had to rely on not having
Save
your hazards
it.
up. It wasn't great, but it was possible. And oftentimes the case in Volcarona had the sun up with it, which means Scovillain could be a weird check to it. Again, not
Oh.
necessarily amazing, but it was not necessarily a washout either.
And imagine Brute Bonnet Sucker Punch boosted by Photosynthesis. Okay.
It was pretty strong. It was pretty
That's what you're
strong.
putting down. Okay. Well, that's interesting to hear. Next up, we got Ground, kind of perennial. I thought it was solid last generation. Wasn't overwhelming, but a solid one. How did it rank this generation with some new additions?
Here's my opinion on Ground. I think Ground was sleeper, one of the top 5 types in the game. I think
Okay.
Ground was secretly one of the best types in the game, but no one was ready to explore it because they saw it lost Excadrill. I don't want to think when I'm playing Ground. Reasonable, because like who wants to think when you're playing Ground? You want to get stand up and click, haha, my Excadrill clicks Earthquake and I win. That's what ground players want. Look, I see you out there. I know it's fun. I like that too. However, if you were actually willing to use your brain for 10 seconds, you realize ground is really solid this generation. Assault Vest Ting-Lu was a cut above the rest. That thing was unkillable. You had Great Tusk, an amazing new addition. Had fantastic rock support. It had spin, which I always likes. Ice Spinner. It's kind of just a better Donphan. I'll actually go and say I think Donphan was always quite good on ground. Just maybe a bit overshadowed, probably like the 7th or 8th best mon on ground, and there was no place for 7th or 8th when the type was, to be honest, solved. Ground was a solved type previously. Like
Wow.
you play Lando. I think you made a video that a couple of years ago. The whole like Lando gravity, sand on Hippo, and then Excadrill, and you just win matchups. It was really solid. So I think people naturally thought this type's bad. It doesn't have its flowchart playstyle anymore. I don't think it necessarily needed that. Clodsire, it has Ting-Lu, it has...
At a glance, it seems like one of the best hazard controlling types in the metagame. You have multiple Stealth Rock and Spikers. You have 2 of the better Rapid Spinners in Overuse, let alone Monotype. And then, you have like excellent bulk to go with it. So, at a glance, it seems like one of the better hazard controlling types. And if you can compare that with some good offense and Guard Chomper, sandy shocks or whatever. It seems pretty powerful. Yeah.
And like obviously it lost to ice, but again, every type in the meta, bar the top tier types, I'd argue, of types they just lose to. That's just monotypes. That's what it is. But
Yeah.
I don't think it was even necessarily a complete washout against ice.
Okay.
You have things like Tinglu with your vest. Let me get a calc up here. I want to check a calc. I'm pretty sure vest Tinglu easily, and I mean easily, 8 specs. Flutter main.
Wow.
Let me get it up here. 2 seconds there. I'll talk about the type in general. And besides that, you can get Salt Vest up here. Was it +1?
This is actually up next too, which is funny.
Flutter main, choice specs. Here we are. Moonblasted 55 to 65, and that is with 0 SPDEF investment. That's just inherently. And that's specs. Specs did that with 0 special defense investment.
Jeez.
And then Heavy Slam 164 to 193.
Jeez.
So people thought like,
Tinglu.
you're like, oh, Tinglu's easy. I take out my Flutter main, they click Moonblast. It barely does half, and they're like, ruh-roh, and then suddenly this fat bastard sits on you and you die. It's so good. As well as that, it ate a surprising amount of water, and water wasn't even really a hard matchup because you had Clodsire, and water couldn't necessarily risk clicking Hydro Pump or Surf against that because, but what if it is actually water absorb? Now, chances are it's probably unaware, but not always. You have Quagsire doing the exact same. You have Gastrodon, who got spikes this generation as well, as you just said. That's a crazy buff to Gastrodon. Garchomp is fantastic offense. I actually used, I think it was Endure Salac Garchomp, because the speed tiers on ground was kind of meh, but Salac, Endure, Garchomp let me get the jump on opponents, and they're like, GG, my banded, whatever, Meowscarada is going to click Flower Trick and win the game. Suddenly I click Endure, and they're like, oh no, you're supposed to die to that, and then suddenly Garchomp's faster, and you can revenge KO with something that's really strong. So for that reason, honestly, I would put ground in A tier, possibly even I put it below Fairy, above Bug.
Okay, so yeah, sleeper top 5. I like that a lot. That's
Rock you put up there, man. And look, I want to say Rock is top tier. It's not.
Bad.
Rock sucks. You're good.
We're gonna be fighting that. We're gonna be fighting that. I'm the hugest rock apologist in the world. No, I'm kidding. Next up, we got Ice.
Me and you are on the same wavelength here. Ice is weird because Ice is bad, but Ice got such an amazing buff this generation with things like Snow. I think the Snow buff was an absolute godsend to Ice. It's exactly what it needed.
Little mon called Chien Pao. Like, I remember how important Weavile was to the typing last generation. What if you just multiply that by 10?
Yeah, it was basically Mega Weavile without the Mega Stone and everything else going first.
Yeah, honestly.
Which made it fantastic.
Excalibur, and we kept Cloyster. We have a Slush Rush user instead of 10. Wait, Iron Bundle's banned, right?
Iron Bundle got banned after some time, yes, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay,
or maybe fortunately, depending on perspective. So I think the main problem with Ice is, if you go to the pre-home tier Ice list and you click sort by special attack, you'll just cry. Their special attackers were miserable, like brutal. Your best option is Frostmoth, and Frostmoth is like Giga mid. Like, I think actually Glaceon is the best option, and I'm not even entertaining Glaceon as a Pokemon. That thing's bad. Sorry, I'm not entertaining.
It's a lot of PU. If you sort by a special attack, like you said, it's PU, 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 PU. Are you from Cryogonal, and then PU, PU, PU.
Yeah, it's bad, man. Like, the special attackers options on, like, when Chien Pao's in your top of special attackers.
Yeah.
Oof is all I'm gonna say. So
Specs
for that reason, that would be actually kind of hilarious. But it had decent defensive Pokemon. I think it had Avalugg, which is fantastic. Cloyster's amazing. The Snow buff was stupid good. Cloyster's always good. Like, Cloyster's amazing. However, it was held back by the impossible Bug matchup. I think Bug was pretty much 100-0. With Caesar and Volcarona, there was nothing it could have realistically done.
Even with Buzzwole lost, I've always thought, like, I always love in monotype when a matchup is considered, like, unwinnable. And it's for reasons you don't expect. Like, I was just playing on stream, and Flying was giving my Rock team a ton of trouble because you have Landorus, you have Turnitz now, you have Corviknight is hard to break. Like, there's all kinds of reasons. But I've thought last generation, I'm pleased to hear it's the same thing this generation, or maybe not pleased, but not surprised that like this Bullet Punch just goes crazy on Mono Steel. Mono Ice.
Snow is better. Snow helps it, but not enough. There's nothing that can realistically tank it even after the Snow buff. Like, Avalugg can, but then Volcarona just comes in, sets up for free.
The loss of Piloswine is so bad for Ice.
It's
like,
so
you
bad.
need that thick fat, you need the Eviolite, because otherwise, like, any fast fire attacker, I imagine, just completely runs willy-nilly.
This one's kind of controversial as well. I think the loss of Lapras was huge too. I think
Oh.
Lapras was really, really good for
Last
ice.
generation?
Yeah, I think last generation Lapras is a sleeper hit.
I've never heard of that. You're on
Water
some new
absorb
shit.
was fantastic against the water matchup. Freeze dry. It was like
Wow.
easy ladder points against flying, against water. It tanked a Mega Caesar +2 bullet punch. Amazing. Even before snow buff. It can OHKO a lot of fire types with spec surf and stuff, so I think Lapras was low-key a threat. Now, unfortunately, Caesar got an even bigger buff this generation thanks to close combat, so anything Ice used, any weird niche checks Ice used to have against Caesar have been completely invalidated thanks to close combat.
That's fair. Well, that's a tough one, but not surprising ultimately. So where are we putting Ice?
I think like mid-D tier. Like kind of
Mid-D?
between
Okay.
between like fighting and flying, I would argue. I think offensively it's really solid, but it just struggled too much with some weird niche matchups.
Okay, fair enough. Next up, we got Rock. Speaking of
Look.
very bad.
I'm a huge Rock apologist. I love Rock. I think Rock's my favorite type. I think it's slightly underrated. When I say slightly, I mean it's not F tier.
But say it,
ultimately-
say it, say it.
But Rock sucks.
Rock sucks.
Rock sucks.
so
Rock really
bad.
sucks. I am a huge Rock apologist. Like if you think you're a Rock apologist, my Discord name is literally like Alex/Rock apologist on my server because everyone's like I'll go to the ends of the earth to defend Rock. However, I was pretty excited when Rock came out because I saw Garganacci, whatever you want to call it. I remember vividly sitting on the bus to work when the whole data mine leaked and be like, oh, I don't want to go to work. I want to sit in the bus all day because I'm looking at these. And I saw this weird Garnacle stats. I'm like, holy shit, this thing's going to be like meta changing for Rock. And
OU, but yeah.
I think I wasn't necessarily wrong. I think it's probably the best Rock type in the game, but it wasn't enough to carry the type at all.
Well, here's a question. I was just playing post-home mono Rock, and I feel like Garganacl has trouble doing stuff because you have no defensive core to last. So, like, any Pokemon that threatens any Rock Mon, Garganacl is generally going to fall into that same category. And then, let me rephrase it. I feel like Garganacl works great when it's part of a defensive core. But since you don't have a whole defensive core to be a part of, it's just useless. It's just like a one-wheeled bicycle, I feel like.
I would agree with that. In a non-Netdex, I think Garnacle is a bit overrated, or a bit bad, and not overrated.
But like T-Tar is also a bulky mon, but at least it has offense. And like Dreadnought can at least be, all this. Like, I mean, I remember looking at Rock when Scarlet and Violet first came out, and I said, there are 8 usable Pokemon.
Yes.
Rock type Pokemon, and that's counting Cloth.
Let's be honest, 8 is a stretch. I'd probably say 4 or 5. It's a stretch. Like you're really grasping at the word usable here. I mean, Glamora, fantastic new mon. That's kind of where it ends. That's kind of all. Actually, Garnacle's pretty good, but usually Garnacle's better with a defensive core.
Are we using Stone Journer or like?
We're using Stone Journer. I'm not going back to those days. You can't make me. Like Colossal was unironically used. That's how bad, the type was because you needed some weird niche answer. And again, I'm coming back to Caesar because Caesar is a completely meta-defining Pokemon. It got close combat, so even your Colossals, your Arcanines, your Macargos, who I think is a really good mon. That's a story for another day. I think all those are now invalidated because close combat exists.
Yeah, I mean, there's just nothing to do about it. Yeah.
I would struggle to say Rock. Look, Glamora is fantastic. Does it have a role on Rock? Maybe not. Because I think it's better on Poison. I think Poison appreciates Toxic Spikes a lot more. I think Poison appreciates Corrosion a lot more. I think it's just kind of, Nihiligo's awkward cousin. Like, you're at a family dinner and like, oh, Nihiligo's there having fun and Glamora walks in. Your mom's like, look, you just had to play with Glamora, okay? Like, oh, I don't want to, but I will. So that's kind of how I feel like Glamora was on Rock. It wasn't bad. It was just kind of a weird, awkward
spits
cousin.
on me. It's weird. They spit too much when they talk. It's a gross.
Yeah,
gross
exactly.
Person.
Yeah, like you're talking to it, spitting up Toxic Spikes. Everyone like, bro, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But it's not bad. I just don't think it necessarily fits what Rock needed. I think Rock's E tier. I think we're lying to ourselves to put anything but E tier. I don't necessarily think there's an F tier type. I don't think there's one type that's literally so unusable you can't play it. But Rock is grasping. Rock is close. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, I thought Rock was of the bottom 3 last generation, and I think it got nerfed. Honestly.
Yes, I agree. I completely agree with that. I think it got left in the dust.
And everyone got nerfed a little bit, of course. That's the nature of like a Dexit, but like. It got it comparatively got worse is what I'm trying to communicate.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
It got worse in its place in the metagame, which is really saying a lot.
It really
Speaking
does.
of mediocre to begin with and then getting hit hard, normal also had a very small pool of usable Pokemon, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, to be honest, I would think in an optimal setting, i.e. or Nat decks, which are coming back to quite frequently just because that's kind of how I base things off.
9
Normal
if you
is...
count Blissey and Chansey twice.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly, yeah. If you count the same evolutionary line, it has 9.
Exactly.
I think normal, in an optimal condition, can easily push high tier, if not high mid tier. However, this is not an optimal condition. It got heavily nerfed. I have never seen a defensive core get so blown out of the water
Exactly.
as it did normal.
It's such an interesting core last generation, but now it's just like gutted.
I think just alone losing Porygons is huge. Porygon Z was one of the best offensive answers on
Big?
normal. Big? You talking the bear?
The bear.
What else do we have for normal? Like, for best bird is Braviary. I feel like Braviary's not bad, but
It's pretty bad.
Staraptor is there actually. No, fine, my bad.
Staraptor and Mousehold were good additions. Cyclizar would be great last generation, but this generation it feels like nothing to take advantage of it.
Yeah, exactly. I think it lost its offensive core in like Porygon Z, which and even Beware, which I think were like fantastic offensive
Such
Pokemon.
glue mons, yeah.
To be fair now, Zoroark gave it a breath of fresh air it needed.
Right.
I think Hisui and Zoroark, which is actually I forgot to mention in Ghost, is another reason that's top tier because it's such a good Pokemon in Ghost. But I think Zoroark is easily one of the, if not the best Pokemon in normal. However, it wasn't enough to carry it because it lost its defensive core. It lost so much of its strong offensive core. I think it was personally the biggest nerf type in the transition to Generation 8 to 9. I think normal lost
more than rock or flying, huh?
No, actually, no. Flying is sorry, my bad.
I was gonna say flying is its own, but and it's further to travel. To be fair, right? Normal was never that good.
Normal was like a solid B tier previously, and now I think I put D tier to be honest. Maybe
it feels
below,
like E to me.
Do you think? Yeah, maybe E. Maybe I'm trying to
play a lot of it, but
no, I think D tier just because Zoroark. I think Zoroark made it D tier.
That's right. That's a good point.
Even how about flying? I think Zoroark was that good that it bumped up a couple of tiers.
Okay.
Maybe below ice, but yeah. But before Zoroark, I think was one of the worst in the game. But Ditto is always nice. The monotype Ditto is quite good for just cheese choice scarf spam. But yeah, it's not amazing overall.
Okay, well let's keep it rolling. Next up, we got Poison, which is interesting. Last generation, it was like this is one of the main reasons why I loved monotype last generation so much. Is there was just a bit different niche of every different play style, and like it or hate it, you had to acknowledge that Poison was a classic playstyle, or sorry, Stall was a classic playstyle, and Poison did that so well last generation with all their generator Pokemon. It shored up all of its weaknesses so well between Crobat or Weezing, or you could even add, you had to have at least a Dark Pokemon, of course, but it was just an interesting playstyle in the grander scope of Monotype. Now, I mean, I just felt like it's probably decent if I had to guess, but it just kind of, I feel like it lost such a core tenet that would have made it so unique of just having its unique playstyle. It's just another offense. And if I'm going to do offense, why wouldn't I run like Fairy? But go ahead, I'm talking for you here.
Sorry, you just took the words out of my mouth. I was saying, I think Poison this generation weirdly veered away from being like hyper defensive stall to being like kind of bulky offense. And to be honest, if you're going to play bulky offense, just play a bulky offense that's better.
That type of team is a dime a dozen in Monotype, right? That's what made it unique before, yeah.
Exactly. So I think it lost. Now, not necessarily everything. It still has a Mungus and Peck's regen core. Losing Slowk and Garler was a big hit.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me. Don't talk to me about Muck. Oh my god, they decimated Muck. Ooh, that thing. I've never like. It was already dead, but they just kept going. But it wasn't even in pre-home, so I don't know why I'm talking about.
He's already dead.
Literally, exactly how I felt about watching Muck get nerfed. However, like Poison had the tools to be offensive, which is weird because it didn't necessarily want to be defensive. The type doesn't inherently want to be defensive. Now, I think Poison can't be bad in Monotype as long as it has Pex and Amoonguss and stuff. I think it's pretty good. However, look at Poison. Now tell me, what is your ground answer?
3 air balloons, but like that's not an answer.
But that's not an answer. And someone's like, "Oh, Moongus, like, kind of. It's a check at best. It's not an answer. It's not a counter to ground. It's a check."
Yeah.
Like again, Ting Lu comes in. I have the calc still open here from Fluttermane. Out of curiosity, I want to see how much Ting Lu does against our boy. So
Among
Giga
Us.
Drain, 16 to 20%. Like it's not
Pitiful.
damage.
Yeah.
It's not damage, you know.
Actually, yeah, you look at Ting Lu and you look at this team. My God.
Yeah, what does it do? It just gets destroyed, and
Wow.
even let
You're
alone
right.
not even just against mono ground, against any type that has ground spam, which is every type in the game, because Earthquake is such an amazing,
Yeah.
attack. There's realistically nothing Poison could do against it. And Psychic was tough too. Now you'd have your Dark type, you'd have things like Skunk Tank. Skunk Tank, I'd have to admit, I used to have said Mach or Drapion are better. I'm coming around to Skunk Tank this generation. I think it, in my
Really?
latest Poison video, Skunk Tank, oh my god, that thing put in crazy work.
I mean, look, I love Aftermath.
I think Aftermath Rocky Helmet is just really heavy offensive pressure. Like, if
Yeah.
you want to touch me, you're gonna pay for it, basically, is what it does.
Better be
as
worth
well
it.
as that, it has things like Sucker Punch, it has defog support, which is nice. In Naptex,
Right.
it has Burning Jealousy, which I think is gone. But even in this, it has some pretty good moves. It has Toxic Spikes, Play Rough if you want a weird fairy answer for dragons. So all in all considered, I think Poison can't be bad, but Poison definitely wasn't the niche it used to have. I think B tier is perfect for Poison.
Okay. I'm actually really surprised it's here that's at high. But yeah, again, to me, it seems like it was gutted spiritually, but that's fair enough.
I think it was, but I think the niche it moved into was not necessarily bad, and I could still do something. It just wasn't as good as its old niche.
Okay. Next up, we got Psychic here. Psychic is something you just mentioned. I feel like it also was gutted, of course, the loss of Tapu Lele. Tapu Lele was probably the most important Pokemon in Psychic, but I don't know. Last generation, you look at Psychic, and I think it was maybe the most multiplicitous type in Sword and Shield, in that, like, you could reliably run 12, even 13 different Pokemon consistently in Psychic. There was no bread and butter. It wasn't solved by any means.
Absolutely.
But there was a Dexit, so you lost a lot of Pokemon. So on the one hand, like, there's no core part of Psychic that you've lost. But on the other hand, the core part of it was the variety of Pokemon you had that you no longer do. So how does it shake up now?
I think Psychic is a weird type. I think it's not a type you can pick up and play. I think if you want to play Psychic, you really gotta dedicate your time and effort to playing Psychic, because
Learn the ins
if you do, I think it's a good type. But I wouldn't blame anyone, because, like, why would you dedicate that much time into what's realistically an average type, when if you put quarter of that time into a top tier type, it'll do just as well. Now, if you are someone who is a die-hard fan of Psychic, and, like, I will, die on the hill of saying Psychic is good, I think there's an argument for it. I think Psychic was, especially with things like Espathra being around, I can't remember if that got banned. I have a feeling it got banned in Natdex. I don't think it got banned in Generation 9. I think the bans in Generation 9 were fairly limited, if anything.
I mean, if Fluttermane's running around.
Yeah,
I'm looking at a monotype set for Psychic right now, so that suggests it is.
So I'm pretty sure, like, that thing alone is a beast. That thing is amazing.
Yep.
It had pretty nice new mons. I think Gallade is good. I think Assault Vest Gallade, especially with the sharpness boost, was really nice. Or on Psychic, you could run like Banded Blade Gallade or Bandlade, whatever you want to call it. That thing is strong. That thing hurts really hard. Now, it did lose really badly to things like, again, Fluttermane. Dark.
Yeah.
It's held back with the two top tier types. Absolutely walk all over it. It had Indeedee, which was a kind of a soft check to Ghost. Like, it wasn't terrible against it because of Indeedee. And it had, what's that new Jigglypuff? I'm really bad at some of the Paradox names. Screamtail, thank you. Screamtail is a nice new addition with screen support. It had, like, Nuzzle. It had Stealth Rocks. And Wish, I think. And Wish. It was a great speed tier. It was a good new addition to Psychic. Hatterene, always a good mon.
It would have fit in so nicely last generation. Well, I guess this is where you play Natdex, because I imagine it does fit in nicely.
It fits quite nicely. I think the Screamtail definitely has its usage. Overall, I don't think it was the best type. I think it was an amazing type that unfortunately did not have
good
the capability. It didn't have the capability to realistically explore itself based on how bad it was against Fluttermane and Ghost and Dark as a whole.
If we're like burying fighting here, I mean, it's hard to imagine. Oh yeah, and you also lose to Dark is going to be.
The thing is, I actually don't think it loses to those types as badly as Fighting did, strangely, because at least it had Indeedee, which is, an immunity. It's like Fighting had nothing to finish Moonblast, eat Moonblast. This had some weird checks. I would argue it lost harder to Bug, because its Bug had things like Volcarona, which was scary. I remember having to run Heat-Proof Bronzong with Rock Slide just to
Dark times.
Just counter. Yeah, it wasn't great. No, Heat-Proof was okay, but it realistically wasn't a very amazing type. I think the top of C tier though. I think it had a slight bit more niche again than fire and electric. It's kind of in the same tier. I think C tier is that weird like offensive that didn't really have a niche otherwise type, and I think psychic fit in that fine.
Just deeply flawed, yeah.
Yeah, deeply flawed, but not terrible.
Now, Steel, perennially great type. I think if you asked even like a casual what the best typing is Pokemon, it's going to be a typing that's quick to their lips. Lost Heatran. I mean, I think when we think about Steel last generation, I've said it a million times if I've said it once, it is a typing that can shore up all of its core weaknesses with a Corviknight, a Heatran, and an Aegislash, or in this case, it'd be Golden Go. And while it did get some interesting new Pokemon, Golden Go comes to mind again, I think the loss of Heatran just means that any fire type attacker makes it really scary. I'm imagining it suffered a lot, but take us through it.
There's realistically no answer it has to fire, which is kind of unfortunate. Now, you know what? I'm a big Steel hater, so I'm kind of okay with it not being in the limelight for once in its life. However, I think you can't deny the inherent amazingness that is Steel outside of bad matchup against fire. It's still fantastic. And for that reason, I won't beat around the bush. I think it's like the top of B tier. I don't think it's quite A tier. It still is an amazing type, but it just isn't from Grace. It's not S tier or A tier it used to be. It's still solid. It still has the most of its core. It has Corviknight and Goldengo. It has King Gambit. It has Scizor. It has Iron Tusk or Iron Thing, whatever it's called.
Did Earthworm see usage? Earth Eater plus Shed Tail seems pretty good with this weird version of Steel.
You know what? It was okay. I think it was a little bit more limited than I wanted to be. I think when I saw it, I'm like, oh, it's going to be really good against and Steel. But I think if it had Heatran, yes, it would have been in an earlier meta. But I think Steel also just had some better Pokemon than Earthworm, because realistically, what's Earthworm doing outside of Shed Tailing? And if you are weak to Flamethrower or something, it doesn't patch up its weakness. Steel's weakness was, I can't deal with fire, and Earthworm does not help you. You can Shed Tail away, all you're going to do is Shed Tail and get it broken 10 seconds later or something else, you know. So I don't think it fixed what it needed to fix. And Earth Eater is nice, but we have Corviknight, which probably does its job just better, if we're being honest.
Okay, well that's interesting. I would have thought like you think of Klefki, you think of Earthworm, it seems really good, especially with offensive Pokemon like it's about Golden Go and King Gambit. But I guess also looking at these Pokemon, it's pretty slow outside of Iron Tread.
It's slow. It's very slow, which is exactly why it's kind of not great.
Yeah, hyper offense struggles if that's the case. Yeah,
absolutely.
And at that point, running hyper offense, Steel's good, but as a plurality of abusable weaknesses, because everybody carries Steel type coverage. Everybody carries like a Flamethrower or an Earthquake or a Superpower just in case a pesky Steel type shows up. So
exactly, and it has answers for most of those. But if your answer goes, it's like dominoes. Once one piece of Steel falls, the team crumbles, and it's hard to keep up that momentum in a meta that's
a good point. That's a really good point. Okay, well, last but not least, we definitely haven't talked about this before. Definitely didn't come up earlier. It's going to be Dragon. So Dragon gets back Excalibur, great new addition. Gets Cyclizar, which maybe is a better addition here than it is in normal, because it actually has the horses to take advantage of it. Still got Dragon Ball, Dragonite, Garchomp. Hydreigon gets Roaring Moon. That's a pretty big one. I've always felt, you talked a little bit before about how there's no like theme to some offenses. I've always had the criticism of Dragons where it's just like, here's just 6 real fucking good mons. Let's just throw them on the same team.
I mean, Dragon is like Bunga Bunga 600 BS3 mons, and there's 6 of them, so
Yeah, I mean that's fair. So how did it stack up?
This one's gonna get me some hate, but you were just right where you were. Bottom of the beat here. I think it lost a lot. I think again, Fluttermane comes to mind. Fairy was a tough matchup for it. Steel was a tough matchup for it. I think it lost a lot of what made Steel. Okay. Sorry, Dragon. What lost what made Dragon. Now, it wasn't bad. The addition to Walking Wake was quite nice. Dragapult is always good. I think Dragapult's a really solid Pokemon. Like things like Garchomp, Dragonite. In a vacuum, it has easily 6 good Pokemon. But when you put those in a team and plop it in the current meta, it's good at best. It's not amazing, it's good. Your best answer to Fluttermane was definitely Dragage. However, if your Fluttermane opponent was smart, they're just going to click Psyshock on the obvious turn you stop into Dragage. And then
even then, Dragage's no recovery, right? So like even then, it's just like forestalling it by 3 or 4 turns, whatever.
Exactly. At best, you hope to poison it with Sludge Bomb and then maybe kill it with Dragapult down the line. Now, you could run like Choice Scarf, Dragapult to outspeed it, but even still, I don't think Choice Scarf Dragapult, especially not with a plus speed nature, is doing much on Dragon outside of outspeeding Flutter Mane. So for that reason, I think it's one of those types that got gate kept. Now, not so bad that it got demolished like fighting, but bad enough that it struggled a bit with the higher
real
tiers.
reason to be drawn to it. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And like Dragon is a fan favorite, there's no question asked. Like Dragon, if you ask any casual player or any fan, what's your favorite type, chances are good they're gonna say Dragon. But I think it lost a little bit in the transition to this one. So I think low end of B tier is a respectable place for it, yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, that's our list done. Amazing work there, my friend. But you know, I love what you've done, where you've walked through it, and somebody who has a basic understanding of monotype like me, I feel like I have a good idea now of what the meta was shaped, how it made sense, how it all pieced together. Obviously, pretty lopsided, you know, in terms of usage and in terms of just how the metagame formed, where you just see like your relationship to Flutter Mane and Dark pretty much decides how good you are as a type. Never love to see it, but it's at least logical.
I think I'd love to see a meta where Flutter Mane was banned and we got a little bit more healthy development in the meta, because I do think this would be a completely different tier list if so. Now, I think there's a few changes that I'd like to make looking at it all in total.
Sure.
I think I was blowing a bit of smoke up Bug's ass. I think it's maybe a tiny bit worse, probably at the top of B tier.
That makes sense.
I think I think it's still a solid type, but maybe not. It's not quite as good as Fairy, Water, or Ground.
It's not in that top 2 tiers. Gotcha.
Yeah, I think it is as good as Steel, Poison, and Dragon. And as well as that, I don't know, I'm sorry, don't hate me for saying this, I'd probably drop Grass a tier down to like the top of
that
G.
one seemed a little bit odd to me, like looking at the picture of it right now. Yep.
Fighting, again, in every other matchup that wasn't Flutter Mane related, that wasn't the top 3 types, it would have been a different story. But I think, and is it fair to rank a type so low just because it loses so hard to the top tiers? I guess yes, it is fair.
That's a tough question, but like again, I like how you laid it out. Where like
prevalent.
Yeah, the way you laid it out makes a lot of sense. I think anybody would be like satisfied with that, which is like, what question are we asking? Are we asking it versus like a Flutter game meta, or are we dealing with everybody else? Like, it depends.
Yeah.
If you want to say, oh, that's like still only 17% chance of coming against Flutter Mane, it's very good everywhere else, you want to bump it up a tier 2, and like you, the viewer, that's fine. But
that's reasonable. I could see an argument for being C tier personally.
But yeah, exactly. Like there's just, you have to take that into account, and that's your opinion. So I think that's super reasonable.
And you know what? I think, yeah, no, you've convinced me, telling the viewers, I think you've convinced me maybe the bottom of C tier, because, you know, it's unfair to, because if we didn't rank Dragon so low because it loses to Flutter Mane, why are we ranking Fighting so low because it loses to Flutter Mane? So I think I'd bump it up that small bit. Also, there's this part of me that likes to look at a nice kind of even tier list, like seeing the 3 threes in a row. It's appealing to me, so I kind of wanted to bump something up there, I'm not going to lie. I think Fighting was the best option to do that. But I think overall, looking at this, I'm pretty happy with the depiction. I'm sad to see Rock so low. I'd almost argue Rock's the bottom of D tier. I'd almost argue, but there's an argument to be made that, honestly, there's an argument to be made that Flying could be the bottom of E tier as well, but I wouldn't necessarily go that far.
I think it makes sense as a tier of its own. Like the way we laid it out before makes total sense, where you say it was probably the worst last generation, and then it got comparatively worse again. So
I am just huffing copium over here, saying that Rock isn't the worst, you know.
Okay. Well, let's take a couple minutes and talk about what we think are the biggest types gaining. We're not going to do a full tier list all over again of what we think like the month 1 home meta is. But let's just like talk for a little bit about who we thought gained and who lost in this new home meta.
So I think one of the biggest gains, just looking at it right now, is Fighting. As long as the Zacian lasts. Once Zamazenta goes, I'll question it, but at the moment, Zamazenta is good. Like, that thing is crazy. I think it's going to get banned personally, but it's fantastic.
Well, it also helps with Flutter Mane a little bit. It's just one more, arrow in your quiver in regards to it, because the soul class is so spit def if you go for that sort of set, but also just hits so hard and so fast. It's just a freaking...
Absolutely.
I like Dragapult was slightly slower and double its bulk. Like, that's what it feels like to me.
I like Iron Defense Body Press personally, which doesn't help against Flutter Mane, but it's just... Any physically offensive Pokemon on the tiers, like, I don't care about you. Like, I'm with a +3 Zen head, but I don't care. I don't care, I live anyway. Now, Urshifu Rapid Strike, that thing's gonna get banned, mark my words. Get back to me in 2 weeks' time, that thing is gone. That thing is despicable. The fact they gave this thing Sword Dance
good
in a more limited Pokedex with punching gloves, and then said, yeah, this thing's allowed. Like, what are they smoking? Whatever they did, I want some, because they are clearly another world to me. That thing is ridiculous. And again, Sneasler, amazing new Pokemon. Zapdos Galar, you love to see it back. It's fantastic. It's good speed
Zapdos
tier.
is an amazing monotype mod. Just puts in so much work.
Fighting, Flying are two good offensive types, especially combined together. It's just really, really good. And I'm going to be honest, I think this Decidueye Hisui has a bit of a niche. I think it has a niche there if you want to explore that. Scrappy and very strong with things like Sucker Punch, Shadow Sneak. Triple Hours is a good move. I think there's a weird niche there for being a good Ghost Answer.
Very cool. Okay,
so
fighting gets a huge buff.
Huge bit winner.
Here, let's. So we had that tier list before. I'm gonna save it. That was our old tier list, and now let's do a tier list based on like how much you gained.
So this is assuming they're not like what the best new types are, but how much they gained. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so in this case, Fighting's S. I think Fighting gained so much. It's so good.
And we don't have to cover everyone, but just to visualize it for fun's sake. I think Flying is A or S2. Just like we talked about how important
it got some really good things back. I don't think it got quite maybe the same amount as Fighting did, but it still undeniably got good. Like it got the genies back, the new genie as well.
Again, yeah.
It's functional again, which is what I wanted. What else had big new upgrades? Water got and Dark by extension got the new Samurott, which is quite
That's a good
nice.
one. Urshifu.
And Urshifu. Yeah, Urshifu's nice. It didn't get maybe any answers to things that we kind of wanted to see, like more more grass or electric answers, but it still got some nice things. Ice got nothing. I don't think Ice got a single thing, making it probably strictly worse than it was. Like I got the new Avalon, that thing sucks. Actually, I remember I watched your Ice video last night. You said, the great thumbnail, by the way, that Chien Pao, I was cracking my whole laughing at that Chien Pao thumbnail.
I know. Look, if there's one thing I'm smoking crack on, it's definitely my Avalon history opinions. I have a blind spot for that. I do think with Terra, there's a world where it's good, but I fully acknowledge that's my objectively worst take.
You know what? I think in Rock it's not necessarily bad, but in Ice it's bad. But there's a player, I'm not sure if you know S Rank, he's probably the best Ice player in the world. He will die on the hill and saying Avalon Hisui's good. I've argued with him, I've had him on my channel a few times. He's like, no, you don't get it, man. Hisui and Avalon's good. If you're watching this S Rank, sorry, I still don't agree with you, man. You're a good friend of mine, you're an amazing player. I don't agree with you, it sucks.
But you're wrong.
Yeah, you're wrong, exactly. Other than that, I don't think it got much in the line of new tools. Like Articuno's okay, but not enough to separate it, especially with the power creep that happened.
I mean, that forum post I was reading was saying, I think Ice got a huge buff with the addition of Articuno. I was like, I'm sorry. That's the saddest sentence I've ever read.
If you're really, really like scraping the bottom of the barrel here, if that's your argument.
It's so rough. Fire gets Heatran, and Arcanine Hisui, and I guess Typhlosion, Volcanion. Actually, no, Volcanion's pretty big, isn't it?
Volcanion's good. I don't think Typhlosion's that good. I put Fire probably like B. Yeah, Fire kind of got the same amount as Water did.
In that Heatran conversation, I gotta imagine it's A. Even if it's Heatran end of conversation.
Heatran alone puts it in A.
Validates,
all the missed. If it had Heatran originally, I think undeniably S tier type. It's just missing Heatran. And Goodra as well. Gudra's
gonna be solid, but like you could end the conversation at Heatran, which is probably all the discussion should be.
Exactly,
sure.
Heatran. That's it.
Yeah.
What else do we have? I don't think Rock gained a huge amount.
No, Bug didn't jump out to me. Psychic.
No. Actually, to be fair, Bug got Cleaver. Cleaver alone is
that's true.
Stupid. I think Cleaver, I think, is one of the best monotype Pokemon. Full stop.
Wow.
I think Scarf, Stone Axe is dumb. It is a dumb move.
I'm here for it. Okay.
So that alone, I think, gave it a solid. But that's all.
I'll say Rock in general. I would maybe B. Like you get Arcanine
actually, Arcanine's good. No, Arcanine's good.
Yeah.
Arcanine's good. Cleaver's good. I give it B. Yeah, it's okay.
Intimidate Arcanine, I imagine, will have some sort of niche against Scizor, so that's useful.
Yeah, it does. And it's just quite strong. Like, nothing realistically lives Arcanine's hits. It's strong.
Electric might be S. It's at least A. Just having Zapdos.
It's not quite
I don't know,
S.
actually. Yeah, I'm looking
it's
at it.
Not quite S. Got Thundurus, which is okay.
Regieleki, which is the same. I think Zapdos is just huge. It's not quite in that Heatran spectrum. I think it's a huge addition.
I think Electrode has a weird niche.
A.
I'd put B. No, I put B. I think B personally. I don't think Zapdos is as good as Heatran. It's not as meta defining as Heatran was, but still good.
Okay. Fairy poison. Do we see any big changes there?
Poison got the new dude, that Sneasler guy.
Unanimous.
Pretty good. Quillfish is actually okay. Overquill's pretty
Yeah.
good. Dark type poison with Intimidate. Kind of the
Yeah,
best dark type
Yeah,
answer.
it's probably the best dark type you're gonna have on mono poisons. That's pretty
It got
handy.
Slow King as well. Slow King is good for the psychic matchup.
Yeah.
It's just Slow King.
Slow King Galar's huge. You're right.
I remember you seen a video. You did like the triple regen core, Slow King, Amoongus, Toxapex. Like that's just going to be poison score always. It has that back now. So I would argue. I think there's an argument to be made at B or A.
God,
for,
you know,
for Poison's return.
If we just get Crobat, which is your wild statement, we're back.
Yeah,
we're back.
Yeah, no. Once you get Crobat, you're back in the top tiers again. But yeah, actually, you didn't get Crobat, so it's not S or A. I think it's B.
Crobat would be like honestly like on the Heatran spectrum of like.
I think Crobat would be S alongside.
It'd be like in terms of like how important. So yeah, I mean, let's say B for that.
Yeah, he's fine. Grass. I don't think Grass got like anything realistically.
Not like meaningfully. Like again, we could break it like Rillaboom. Zarude actually. I was getting some sweeps of Zarude. That like jungle healing set always was hard. There's a lot of my points misplaced
I like jungle reading too. I actually like that set as well. But I don't think it's particularly amazing. Rillaboom's like fine, but
Rillaboom is like without Grassy Glide. It was. I mean, that's my hot take as a grass player last generation. I thought it was like arguably not that good last generation, where it either solo won you the matchup or did nothing the whole game.
Yes.
So like without Grassy Glide, it's just like, I mean, sure you're solid and you're okay setup sweeper, but I'd rather just use Zarude or Meowscarada to have a better speed tier, be a better setup sweeper. I would 100%
agree in that. I think Rillaboom
Victory Dance, Lilligans, like why would I use Rillaboom specifically? Just for the grassy boost on terrain, right? Like,
you know what? I haven't actually explored Lilligant much yet, but I want to explore it a bit more. Like I did a small bit, but not a huge amount. So I think it can be good. I think Victory Dance is good, but again, I don't like Hustle.
I hate
very much so.
It's like a theological difference between me and Lilligant Hisui users. Like I can't get there.
Yeah, that's fair. I completely agree. So
respect you. We have to divide our church as grass type players.
I think I give it like C. It's okay. I got some like okay things, but not amazing.
Zarude was actually big in my opinion.
Zarude is good. Zarude is good, but that's kind of it.
Yeah.
What's next on the list?
Let's look at Psychic briefly. You get Hoopa, that's a big one. Griselia is getting gassed up.
Articuno. Bravery is scary, man. Bravery.
Yeah.
I shit bricks when I say Bravery.
Looking Galar. You know what? Psychic got a lot.
I got a lot. Mew is good. Weird Gear, if you are a bit off your head, there's a weird niche for it. Wouldn't necessarily say to use it, but hey, if you want to go crazy, it's not completely unusable. Even Slow Blow Galar, if you like the dummy, like quick draw, quick claw, niche, stupid set. But
that's speaking of theological difference. That's the same thing in my opinion.
I don't like it, but people use this. Meloetta is actually quite a big one. I think Meloetta is quite good.
Okay. I think normal besides Ursaluna, which is a big addition, I guess. Is there any Trick Room users in normal? Anyone that can set that up for them?
There is on not for sure.
There's a couple. I would be surprised to hear there's a couple of normal type Trick Room teams going around. So, considering how bad it was before, maybe
you can also cycle that pass into it if you really want to do. And Zoroark's there, so
I mean, there's a lot of hitters like Zoroark, Maushold, Staraptor, Ursaluna. Like that's a hard hitting core right there. Ditto.
It is, but it doesn't have the defensive core to back it up, though. I feel
no. Or even like if you're going to do HO, you'd prefer something like a great like Spikes or Rock Setter or like I mean that's interesting.
I put like C.
Yeah,
I got like two pretty okay mons. Who do we have next?
Fairy, did we talk about yet? I don't think so. Just Enamorous. We did talk about it briefly. Just pretty much Enamorous. Yeah, so like
D. Yeah, it's fine. It's an okay new addition. That's about it.
Yeah,
it's an okay new addition.
Then is that Ground? I think so.
Yes, that's Ground next.
Okay, Ground. We get Ursaluna, pretty huge. Lando, pretty
huge.
Is
big. Lando's big.
That's if you're gonna get two mons, that's about as good as it gets.
Exactly. But again, Ursaluna, I think it's not as good in Ground because it already has the bulky offense core locked down.
What is it doing specifically? Yeah.
Like Ursaluna is always usable.
Lando Eye still used. I forgot about that. Lando Eye's.
Lando Eye is fantastic new addition. That's a fantastic new addition. It needs the special attacking heavy hitters. Sheer Force Life Orb is very good.
You're right.
For that reason, I think for that reason alone, I put it in like C. A. I think A.
With Lando,
you're right. You're right. Lando's actually that good. You're right. Sorry, you're right.
Lando and Lando Eye. I mean, I can be talked into B. I think it's maybe.
You know what? You're right. I can't understand how good Lando Eye is. That thing's crazy.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's listen to that. Bottom of A. Next, we got Ghost. It's always
I
so
don't
hard off the
remember
top of my
too
head.
much getting things here. Like Basque Legion's
Basque
okay.
Legion. Last Respects is
I don't think
banned,
it's
correct?
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Gigaband. Like Houndstone is a kind of a weird defensive niche if you want to run Fluffy. I don't think it's amazing, but it's an option.
Yeah. Oh, Spectrier.
Spectrier is really good. Spectrier is
I
really
loved it
good.
last
Honestly,
gen. I thought it was slept on last gen.
I think it's a little bit better than Fluttermane. I'd almost go as far to say. Just
Wow.
because Grenade is dumb. And you know,
Wow.
you
I
got
mean, okay.
you have fairy coverage now, you have psychic coverage. You just have better coverage this generation.
Well, okay. Okay. I like it. I like it. So we're gonna say B, A. It's already the best. It just got bester.
Because like it just got bester, exactly. It didn't get like an amazing tube, it got bester, if that makes sense. Now I feel like Dark didn't get as much as it did in the base game, but that's fine because Dark is, you know, fantastic as it was. Like Moltres instant X
Muck,
Pokemon.
Overquill, Zarude, nothing. Oh, Samurott History is
Samurott,
really good.
Samurott and Moltres are probably the two biggest ones, if I'm being
Right,
honest.
Moltres is amazing monotype. I forgot. You're
Moltres
right.
is stupid good monotype. And you know what? I'm not going to sleep on what's it called? Hoopa as well. Hoopa's pretty good.
Yep. I'll agree with you there. Okay. So yeah,
it got some like okay
Bester.
things. It's not amazing, but yeah, Bester again. Maybe like C.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
Actually, you know what? I can't understand how good Goltrace is, especially behind screen. So maybe yeah, B.
Yeah, Goltrace, but also like I Samurott History, like.
Actually, yeah, put an A. I forgot about Hisui and Samurott.
Okay, wow.
Spike setting is stupid. I think C is actually the best move in the game.
It hits hard, and also like Water Dark's a weirdly good defensive typing nowadays.
It is. It's quite good. It's quite good.
So I'm kind of here for it. Okay, and then we're gonna do last but not least. I think we do them all, but what the hell? We're here. We got Dragon / Water. Dragon got Gudra History, Regidrago. Yikes, that's it.
That's it. I mean, Gudra is good, but not good in like Gudra is.
It's gonna help with Fluttermane a ton. It's gonna help with Fluttermane a ton.
I think Gudra and this home in general put a bit of manners in Fluttermane. Now, get back to me in a few weeks' time when I play more of this meta and I decide actually I hate it, needs to get banned. But at the moment, I think a lot more types can actually do with Fluttermane at the moment.
Well,
and
you know,
Gudra
we're talking about how
answer.
you need a single answer for Fluttermane. There it is. It's kind of like Heatran. Like
exactly.
there it is. Bet.
Absolutely. So for that reason, I'd put it maybe A tier. I think.
Yeah, I mean, like
really,
using that Heatran comparison is kind of essential.
Yeah,
you're right.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's kind of it. I think the main losers line. Sorry, ice. I didn't say line. Main losers ice. It just got nothing realistically that it wanted.
You can make the argument of Fairy. Fairy was top 3 before, and Fluttermane gets a lot worse, like we just talked about.
That's true, but
and it doesn't get a ton of additions.
Fairy's still an inherently good type, though. I think.
Sure.
Ice. Ice kind of stayed where it was, and everything else.
But here's a question: if we're sitting here 2 months from now and we're talking about how Fairy is like, yeah, it's top 5-ish, that's a massive fall off considering an undisputed top 3.
That's true. If it's not definitely top 3, then yeah, that's a big fall off. That's true. So I'd be curious to see now in maybe 3 or 4 months' time, we'll get back and discuss, back at this and be like, what were we smoking? Our opinions are completely outlandish. These are so wrong, but maybe not.
It'd be fun to do an exercise like this again with all the DLC coming. I think we just got it confirmed today, actually, that it's fall. So, I mean, this is exciting. So, I mean, I'm optimistic for the sake of monotype going forward. Gen 9, I think you and I both agree that it's not been in a good place at all in the most recent exit, but there's a lot to look forward to. I'll be honest, talking with you as much as I do, you guys, the viewers, will be happy to hear that I'm pretty seriously considering some Nat decks after this point. So maybe you and I can hop on that at some point in King Krabs.
Yeah, definitely. If you ever want some Nat decks, hit me up.
This has been super fun, man. I appreciate it. I feel like this has been a joy. Honestly, just an hour of listening to that sultry voice. That's been excellent. That deep accent. I love it.
Thank you. No, I appreciate so much being on the channel. I've been a big fan of yours for a while now, so it's cool to actually, come here and talk about something that I'm maybe too knowledgeable about, maybe like a scary level of knowledge about.
No, hey, it feels like Monotype is like the little brother of Pokemon, but considering the usage stats, it really shouldn't be. It feels like, there's always so much support for the tier when it's getting like the same usage as like UU essentially, and UU is like the 4th or 5th biggest ladder on Showdown, like including like crazy shit like anything goes. Like it's a huge like ladder and kind of underrepresented.
Absolutely,
so super fun.
I think it's only getting more popular as well, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean the selling point I've always said is so cool. You're a gym leader for a type. Like go off, like learn the ins and outs.
It's a very different game for sure, but a good one.
Okay, well, it's been a pleasure, my man. I wish you the best, and thank you all for watching.
Take care.
And I'll catch you all next time.